Awesome. So I'm going to be talking about home care. And as I talk, I always love questions. So Tina, is it a possibility if you can unmute folks if they do have a question, if they raise their hand? That would be great, just because I love to
Yeah,
have interaction
great.
and really get your feedback on what you want to hear.
Or people put things on chat too.
Okay, I will make sure I monitor that then. But please let me know if there's something I miss.
Great.
So, again, welcome everybody. My name is Bevi Katari, and I am a gerontologist with Herewith. And a lot of people are usually ask me, what is a gerontologist? So just to get that straight, I'm not a medical doctor, but I am a specialist in working with older adults. And my entire career has spanned working in different capabilities with older adults. I've worked, in assisted living, in facilities. I worked in PACE organizations. And then recently, over the last several years, I've been working for tech companies that are helping older adults create programs and products specifically for their needs. So that's just a little bit about me. And today I'm going to be talking about home care in general, and kind of all the options that are out there. And then I'm going to talk a little bit more about what Herewith does and how we are changing the industry a little bit. So let's get started. So why are we even talking about this? So the aging population, as you know, is increasing at a very rapid rate. 80% of all older adults right now say they prefer to live at home. Why is that? Well, first of all, it's a lot cheaper than facilities. Typically, I'm in California. I'm not sure where everybody else is located, but in California, if you look at assisted living or nursing home type care, it can be anywhere from $6,000 a month all the way to $20,000 a month. So obviously, at those prices, it's not everybody that can afford it. It's very, very expensive, and that is just for either sometimes admission or sometimes just the room itself. So on top of that, you're paying for any cleaning, food, your taxes. So it can be the price range can really just skyrocket. And the second point that I think is even more important than the money is people are happier and live a longer life when they are aging at home. Everybody kind of creates their little bubble at home. And typically older adults have been in their home for many, many years. This is where they've raised their family. That's where they want to live. Why would they want to kind of go outside and live in a facility if they don't have to? So for the most part, older adults want to live at home. Second, the caregiving industry, what we're going to talk about more, is predicted to really be a 153 billion with a B industry by the end of this decade. Right now, it's kind of hovering around the 100 million in the US alone, but this industry is insane. But even though there's so much high level of need to it, there's a huge percentage of people that are just not getting. It's not something that people are in school and they're like, I want to grow up and be a caregiver. It typically doesn't pay very well. So right now there's a need of 3.2 million people in this profession. And the reason being, people are living longer. People are, there's great medical advancements. So people are just living longer. There's also an increase in chronic conditions because people are living to their 90s, 100s, 110s even. But with that do come a lot of chronic conditions that require help for a longer amount of time. So previously where folks were living at home or maybe with their family members, now, kind of that nuclear home is more present. It's not intergenerational. People need care in the home. And they're not really getting it from their sons and daughters because they're also working and they have grandchildren that are either working or need care themselves. So this whole industry is really shifting, and that's kind of where the need for home care and caregivers is coming from. Any questions before I move on? I know I speak fast, so let me know if I'm also talking too fast here. All right, let's keep going. So I want to talk a little bit about the aging spectrum. People often ask me, what does it mean to get older? What are my choices? What can I do? And there's no one size fit all. There is nothing that I can say that fits kind of broadly. I know we have like 21 people here on this call. I can't, without looking at you, without talking to you, I can't be like, well, this is the best fit for you. It really depends on a per person basis. It depends financially. It depends what kind of support you have. It depends what kind of support you need. So it is a very broad spectrum. And I want to go over the spectrum with you now. So you'll notice here at the bottom, I'm not sure if you can see my mouse here, but towards the end of the screen on your left-hand side, this is going to be your cheapest at the bottom. As you go up this way, it's higher in cost. And then if you go across the screen, it's going to be the level of care. So of course, here at the very corner, this is the lowest cost and the lowest level of care. All the way here on the top is going to be your highest cost and highest level of care. You'll notice nursing home is right here on the very corner. And people typically say, well, when I get older and I'm going to hit 100, I'm going to just move into a nursing home. I think that word nursing home is thrown around a lot. And we want to be careful with that because that is typically your highest cost of care. And it's going to be the highest level of care. Not everybody needs that on a daily basis. Maybe you just need a little bit of help cooking and cleaning. You don't necessarily need to be in a nursing home. A nursing home is defined by being a 24/7 supervision, and it's typically by a nurse. There's a nurse on staff that can answer for medical things, can help with medications, and some of these places also have a doctor on site too. So as you can imagine, those are very, very expensive. They are sometimes also covered by their insurance. I'll talk about insurance in just a bit, but because this is practically a hospital level of care, it is very, very, very expensive. So let's kind of shift our gaze over here to the other side, which is adult daycare. What is adult daycare? This can start really as young as 30 sometimes. These are for older adults that might need a little bit of help during the day. Maybe they live with their family, they're younger adults. But during the day, similar to like a daycare where you would send your children, there is adult daycare where folks can go. They might have memory problems, they might have mobility problems, or cognitive problems that require them to be under supervision, but they don't need a lot of help. Maybe, there's activities there. There's a little bit of help with lunch. Maybe they take them on excursions and entertainment, social activities. But for the most part, it's just kind of somebody there monitoring them, making sure they're doing okay. And if there's a need, somebody's always around to help with that need. So that's going to be your lowest cost. Again, not for everybody. A lot of older adults really never get to this stage because they are okay, completely fine by themselves at home, whether that's just a check-in from a neighbor or a friend or a loved one, and this is something they just don't need. Next, I'm going to move up to senior apartment. Now, you may have seen these. These are typically kind of larger buildings or facilities that are no different than renting at a regular apartment, but they are catered towards a 55+ community. So with that community, they might get things like maybe a monthly trip somewhere, or they might have activities on a daily basis. Perhaps, they have their bingo nights and maybe a dance on Fridays, activities, and they might even have a coordinator that kind of connects them to community services. But for the most part, senior apartments are just like regular apartments. They also have a lot of things already pre-made, like grab bars and ramps already built in. So it's a little bit easier for an older adult to age in place when they're in a senior apartment. And most importantly, they have access to, friends and other people like themselves that they can socialize with. So this is a great opportunity for people that are very independent and they just need a little bit of care. And, they kind of want to pre-plan for as they get older. Maybe they move in when they're 65 or 75 and they're perfectly fine, but they know maybe 10 years down the road, they have a condition that might need a little bit more help. So this is a great, and for the most part, they are a little bit more cost effective. They're going to be a little bit more expensive than a typical apartment because they have those amenities. But one thing about them is they're very independent. There's nobody going into their home and checking in on them. These are just like you would rent out a regular apartment. It's pretty open. Next, we have our retirement communities, which are more about that assisted living, where I know I have assisted living over here, but really, it really depends on what area you live in. Retirement communities are similar to apartments, but they're a little bit spread out. We might have an emergency on-call system where if you fall, there's somebody on staff that'll check in on you, just a little bit more level of care. And I'm going to take a little break here because I've been going over a few things. Any questions? Anything else that anybody would like me to elaborate on? We've got a quiet crowd today. All right, a little early. I'm going to keep going then. Up on top here, you'll notice this giant box, which is called a CCRC, or Continuing Care Retirement Community. In California specifically, there's a lot of them, like up in Oakland, Berkeley. What it is these are communities that are built within the city, and they have different levels of care all in the same place. And you kind of contribute to it based on your need. So perhaps you're 65 years old and you're like, you know, I'm retired. I really want to live in a place with my friends and people like me, but I know that I'm going to need a lot of care, and I'm able to invest into this care right now. So you might move into a senior apartment or retirement community within the CCRC, and then move along that all within that community. So this is especially important for people that maybe they are in a marriage where a spouse might have dementia and they need a little bit more help, but the other adult does not, but they want to live together. A CCRC is a good place for them to kind of start out, as the spouse with dementia is going to need more level of care. They can remain living in that same community. So CCRCs are definitely around in the Bay Area. In the middle here, we have respite care. Now, this can be a couple of different things. One, it could be where they already have care in their home. Maybe they're just living with their spouse or with a child that's taking care of them. And for, you know, maybe a couple of weeks, they just need a little bit of care. They can move into a facility just for those 2 weeks, or they get care just for those 2 weeks. Or it could be where there's a medical reason, and perhaps they've had a hip replacement, or they just had a fall for a short amount of time. They're living or getting care just to kind of fix that need. It's not a long-term goal. So it looks like I do have a question. Let me take a look at that. Are senior apartments the same as those with a dining hall and meal service? So typically, senior apartment would not have a dining hall and a meal service. Typically, they're a little bit more independent. So you would have your own kitchen in there and you would take care of meals by yourself. The retirement community, on the other hand, the one level up, those would have a dining hall and a meal service should you opt into that. CCRC, what is the buy-in? That's a great question. The buy-in is very, very different based on the community. So there's CCRCs, for example, in Union City that are very expensive to buy into. It's about $1 million as a buy-in. And then on top of that $1 million, you have to pay the monthly $10,000 to live there. There's other ones I know in Berkeley and Oakland that are a little bit cheaper. So it's kind of like buying into a home, let's say, where if you're buying a home in the Bay Area, obviously you're going to start out that $1 million range. You invest into it, but on top of that, there is that monthly spend. And once you buy, can your kids inherit the property? So here's a good, that's a great question. So they will not inherit the property because the property does not belong to you because you do a buy-in. So it's not like you buy that home, but you buy into living there. And typically if somebody moves out or they do pass away, there's a clause that the kids or their next of kin will inherit a certain percentage. So it could be anywhere from 75% to 90%, 95% of the money they will get back from that buy-in, but it's very different across all communities and all properties. So, you know, if that is something you're considering, definitely ask for what happens afterwards. How much of that money, of that $1 million or whatever that is, goes back to you. Let's see, I think there are just 55 plus communities as opposed to CCRC, which have level of care options. Now there are, but it really depends. There's so many different kinds of options out there, even in the Bay Area. So there are definitely CCRCs that are more village-like. I know actually in the Bay Area, there's ones called The Villages, where you have little cottage style ones where you're living independently. And then it's that more facility, and it's all within kind of a gated community. So there's different level of options depending on where you live. Let's see, I got a lot of wows and eeks. So it is, I don't know if those wows or eeks were dependent on the price, but those prices are astronomical, and it is not meant for everybody. You know, that is unfortunate truth. But for people that, you know, maybe have a home, they've established a home, they've lived in their home for 30 years, and they have that kind of asset in there, but they need that care, and they're aging. It might be a good opportunity for them to reinvest, you know, maybe sell their home and put that money into a buy-in at a CCRC, so that way their needs are taken care of. Does long-term disability pay for anything besides assisted living? So again, that really depends on the plan and insurance that you have. Typically, I want to say about 95% of any long-term care insurance will not pay for a housing situation. It's going to be paying for your medical care. It might pay for some home care, but it's very rare that there's a policy that will pay for an assisted living. In my 15 years of working in this industry, I have not met one individual that has assisted living coverage. That said, there's certain plans that might do it. Specifically, people that have bought plans a long time ago. Maybe they bought a long-term plan 15 or 20 years ago. That was really the case. I'm trying to sell these plans. They said, hey, we'll cover you for life. And they bought into them a long time ago. They may pay for it. It's very uncommon nowadays to be able to purchase a plan that will be paying for assisted living. There are some retirement benefits. For example, one that I know of personally is the national NFL. So I used to work as a consultant to the NFL for their retired players. One of the benefits, if you were an NFL player, is they basically cover you for life, and that includes assisted living. So the individuals that I would meet with, they would live in a very nice assisted living, and it was completely covered by the NFL. That's their private insurance. Some VAs, veterans benefits, also cover it. So if you have those kind of one-off private insurance or retirement insurance options, that might do it. But a regular plan will probably not cover any type of housing for you. What are the options left? Personal adult daycare and personal home care. Yeah, exactly. So it really depends on the type of care you need. And I'm going to talk about what regular personal care looks like. But it really depends on what you need. Are you looking for something that is memory care, somebody that has dementia and needs that 24/7 attention? Or is it just because you need, you know, some meal prep in the home and some cleaning and some shopping done? There's a huge range, and it's not the same for everybody. I think the most important thing if you were to take away one thing from my talk today, it would really be you know, there is no one size fit all for aging and for planning the, you know, as you age, what to do. I think it heavily depends on your income, what your needs are, what your supports are. So those are the three things really to consider when looking at this. I forgot to mention, I was actually a social worker for several years for Santa Clara County. So I helped working with adults on a one-on-one basis and kind of sitting with them, looking at their assets and planning this out for them and their spouse, if there's a spouse involved, or with their children. So I would highly recommend, you know, working with a social worker if this is something that you're thinking about for later on down the road, is what's the best option for you. I just want to present it so that way you know that there's options, because right now, if you were to, you know, place a call or do a little Google search about what are my options, you're going to be getting bombarded with people trying to sell you a retirement community or a senior apartment or an assisted living, because of course they're going to want to make money from that. So just be, you know, kind of mindful of that. And sometimes they're going to be selling you things that you might not need. Maybe you don't need that 24/7 support, but if that's the only thing that you're offered, you know, you'll pay into that and you'll pay a very high level. Or maybe you need a lot more care. Maybe you're looking for somebody that really needs that 24/7 support, and an assisted living or a senior apartment, while it might be cheaper, it's really not the best route to go down. So you want to always keep that option in mind, to be very careful when you Google or when you talk to people that you're getting the full picture and not just what they represent. Okay, where were we? Kind of went on a tangent here. I think we were right here as some of these smaller ones. They're not very popular, specifically in the Bay Area, like senior co-ops, congressional or active senior housing. This could be with a religious affiliation. Co-ops are when different groups of seniors decide to live together. Again, don't really see that here much in this area. It's definitely bigger. In Europe, let's say, intergenerational living is huge, where they actually have homes that are, have maybe a shared kitchen, but multiple living rooms where different families can actually live there. And when I say families, it could be two older adults and maybe a single mom and her kids, and they're not related. They just live in the same place because they share one common goal, or it's great for the single mom to have maybe two older adults in the home that can keep an eye on the toddlers, but at the same time for the older adults, it's great to have that working individuals that can help pick up groceries. So it's kind of this mutual intergenerational connection that is very popular in Europe, but not so much in the US. It's not something that we're seeing, but perhaps in the future, you never know. And then independent living, it kind of goes along the senior apartment. It's complete freedom. It's just like buying an apartment, but you get a little bit of amenities. And sometimes what is important to know is they might have independent living and assisted living in the same exact place. And they might have memory care in the same place too. So it might be where typically the first floor is memory care because they're the most level of care. And then you go up and then it might be assisted living where the 2 floors on top have dining halls, they have cleaning support, they might have a nurse on site. And then you go all the way up to like the top level and it's completely independent living. These are folks that, just want to be in that community. They might have a loved one that also lives there, or they just know that they're going to need that level of care. So just because these are all in different boxes, they can all be intertwined depending on the company. All right, next we are going to talk about dementia care. I think I spoke about this a little bit. It really depends on the type of dementia, how fast it's progressing, as what kind of level of care they need. Are they in that beginning stages where it would really just be good to have somebody in the home? You want somebody to make their meals and drive them places, but they're pretty independent, with things like bathing and eating, all the way to the very end where they are bedbound and they need, help with everything. Or maybe they're in between where they're trying to get out and they really shouldn't get out by themselves. So you need a locked facility. Depends what level of care it is. We spoke about nursing homes in the very beginning. And lastly, it is that hospice care where unfortunately they are at the end of life. And that can be in the home with a lot of support. Thankfully, hospice is typically covered insurance benefit once you are given that terminal diagnosis. And it could be either in a facility or it can be at home. Now, the point of our talk today is in-home care. You'll notice that in-home care spans the entire spectrum. So in-home care can start even before you move into anything. It's really in your house. It is non-medical, and this can complement your family or loved ones helping you out, or maybe you're living by yourself and you need a little bit of help, all the way through to that hospice level, where even if you're getting hospice level care in your home, you want to supplement that. So in-home care kind of spans the spectrum. Now, I typically get a lot of questions. That was great that I got some. I'm going to take a break before I move on. Anything else in terms of the housing and aging spectrum on that before I move on? No? All right, then I'm going to keep on going. So let's talk a little bit about home care. That's why we're here today. What is home care? So, home care is typically for older adults or folks that have disabilities. And it's things like light housework, it's meal prep, it's medication or reminders. Now, the word reminders is very important because people that are giving home care will not actually feed you the medications. They're going to say, here's your pills. These are your 2 pills. And it's 9 o'clock. You need to have them. They will not actually administer them. If it's anything that's intravenous or an IV, they will not actually connect you to it. They are not nurses, but they're simply reminding you. Companionship is huge. So it might just be an older adult that otherwise is living by themselves and there's nobody sorry, 1 second. My computer is frozen here. So can you guys hear me okay? Yes?
Yep, I can hear you.
Sorry about that. It kind of flashed, so it threw me off here. Companionship is, it can vary for very many reasons. It could just be that maybe they have dementia and they're not really able to go out by themselves anymore. They want somebody in the home, or they just live alone and they need a little bit of companionship. Now, as I showed you earlier on our spectrum, maybe they're living in a assisted living already and they're getting help getting with their meals and stuff. But even in assisted living, something I didn't talk about is that staff ratio. Staff ratio here specifically is about 12-1. Memory care also about 12-1, 10-1, depending on the level. So you might be paying that $10,000 a month, but there's only one staff member for every 10 residents. So even with that, some people do supplement with home care. Personal care, this is things like, using the bathroom, changing clothes, taking a bath, or whatever that may be, any personal care because of a chronic condition or mobility condition that they're not able to help with. Home care will cover that. And non-medical support for managing their health conditions. So maybe this is things like transferring, getting up from their wheelchair into the bed, kind of moving their oxygen tank around or something like that. So this is anything somebody can do. Typically a family member can also do. Maybe they're just not there. But this is non-medical care. So if I want to kind of scream that out to you, is home care is non-medical care. Now, you might have heard, or you might have seen people like, wait, I do see people that come in the home and do IVs or wound care. So that is home health care. There are two different things. That is mostly covered by insurance. Home care is typically not. Questions? All right. So who are we typically serving? Whether that's at my company or whether we are serving people in the industry. So we are serving the older adult first and foremost. That is kind of our key clientele. They are between 70 to 100 years old. Of course, we get folks that are a little bit younger, folks that are a little bit older, typically between 70 to 100. They're not very familiar with technology, and you'll see why I put that in there. They prefer that one-on-one interaction. That's how they like to be served. And they're typically using basic features in their smartphones. And you're probably wondering why I'm talking about smartphones and tech. So I'll get to that. Next is the adult child. Now, typically this person is between 50 to 65, roughly. But for them, caregiving is a struggle because they're probably working. They have their own children to take care of, and they're also helping take care of that older adult. Many of you might be thinking of that as yourself as well. They are open to technology, but it's a little bit easier for them to just have that one-time human interaction. So they're juggling a lot. So we talk to them often. And lastly, the caregivers. So one important statistic to think about is 34% of our caregivers are actually over 65. So they kind of fit into many of these categories themselves, because we've got a lot of people that are working later into their lives, whether that's just because they want to or because they need to. So they're juggling a lot of things. They're juggling their own aging aspects, and they just want to be seen as professionals, and they need that support. Got a question here. Looks like it is a happy face or a scared face. I'm not quite sure what that kind of face emoji is, but you feel the situation. Yeah. So when I say, I think there's a famous quote by Rosalind Carter, which is, everybody is going to need caregiving, whether you need to be a caregiver or you will need a caregiver or you will be a caregiver. Everybody really is going to be affected by this. And when people ask me, what made you get into this field? Like, this is something that, first of all, very few colleges even offer the field of gerontology, where, with older adults. And I'm like, because that's going to affect every single person I know, including myself. You are lucky to get to that level and need the care, because that is the only option for every single person here. So it's something that affects everybody. And similar to that, caregiving in regards to home care will affect everybody, whether you like it or not. There's just no escape to that. All right, off on that tangent, I'm going to keep on talking. So what is happening before we came into the picture? I'm going to talk about what we do, but we talked a little bit about facilities, but for home care, typically there are something what's called an agency, a care agency. And you might have seen these driving around where they're large franchises or they're small mom and pop shops. And they're local businesses. And what they do is they employ caregivers. So they might have, 10 caregivers on staff. And family members call them up and they say, hey, I need care for mom. And they say, okay, well, we've got Susie here who's working for us and she's going to go see you on Monday and you have to pay, a $50 per hour. That's how much we charge. And then they pay the caregivers a certain amount of that and they keep the middle chunk for themselves because they do have a lot of expenses. They cover insurance, and so forth. The problem with that model is, well, there's a few things, but one is there's really no control for the family. The family cannot say which caregiver they want. They can't say, I only need care like 2 times a week for an hour, or I only need 2 hours once in a while when, I'm not able to take care of mom, or when mom is typically at adult daycare, but every Mondays it's a half day. So I need somebody to watch mom only half day every Monday. There isn't very much flexibility there. And the biggest piece is that price. You'll see that in the Bay Area, the price of private home care through an agency runs between $50 to $60 per hour. But the caregiver on the flip side gets paid a little bit higher than minimum wage. So they're getting between $16 to $20 an hour. These averages are a lot higher, but in the Bay Area specifically. So what happens is the family, if they're paying, say, $50 an hour, maybe they can only afford 2 hours of care because that's $100. That's all they can afford a week. On the caregiver side, the caregiver is only getting paid, say, $20. So that caregiver has to work twice as much in order to make the same amount of money the family's making. So they're having to kind of take multiple roles, do multiple things and juggle. And we talked about the caregiver earlier. This might be an older adult themselves. So they're doing a lot just to kind of make ends meet. And that's typically the model that's still happening with agencies. The next model is something called care.com or online boards. So this could be things like Facebook or Craigslist, where you just go on and you look for care. Families may post an ad, even if it's a newspaper, we're going old school here. And they says things like, looking for care for mom, Monday and Wednesday, 2 hours a week. Now, the problem with that is you might get a lot of great people and you're going to pay them directly. Say you're saying, I can only pay $25 an hour. These folks are not background checked. There is no insurance coverage for that. So if a caregiver starts 2 weeks into it, they are cleaning the kitchen and they fall and they break their leg, that would, obviously all those medical expenses would be on the family. They can get sued. If for some reason something happens with that caregiver, maybe they were not background checked and they steal mom's ring or something, there's no follow-up, there's no insurance for the caregiver if they're blamed for something as well. And there's no support, most importantly. So if a caregiver calls out sick, there's nobody to be like, I need care Monday though, that care need doesn't go away. Can you get a replacement? So if you are doing it by yourself, there's no, with a care agency, you can call them and say, okay, my caregiver is sick, send me somebody else, whoever you have. But for that agency, the online model, that just doesn't exist. And lastly, facilities, we talked about this a lot. It's a very high cost for the family, and there's no control over the services or personal accommodations. So if you're in a facility and dinner starts at 6 o'clock, but you typically eat dinner at 9 o'clock, tough luck. That's when the dining room is open. 6 o'clock is when the meal service is, and that's it. And as we spoke about, there is a limited staff for a large number of seniors. So you might have 40 to 50 older adults living there, but maybe there's only 10 staff members that are accommodating everything. So that personal touch is not there that you would get if you were to hire a caregiver. So who are we as Herewith? We kind of like to flip the switch a little bit. We are a care platform that connects the family members who are seeking the care directly to caregivers who are providing the care. So think of us, we like to think of us like kind of like an Uber. So you've got drivers out there that are looking for work, and you've got people out there that are looking to get places, and Uber connects the two. We are similar to that. We talk to families and, figure out with them what kind of work they need And then we've got a pool of caregivers nationwide that are working for themselves, and we connect the two. And they stay on our platform, and we help provide them with insurance and stuff that I'm gonna get into. So again, we like to think that we are revolutionizing the care industry by connecting the older adult or the adult child directly to a local caregiver. And of course, we've got an app that does that. It's, you can log on today and just kind of scroll and see caregivers in your area. And most importantly, you set the price. So if you're looking for care in, say, Redwood City, you can say, I'm looking for care in Redwood City for my mom. I need it twice a week, and she only needs help with meals and a little bit of companionship, but I can only afford to pay $23 an hour. What we then do is we get that information and we source it to the caregivers that are in that area. So we will say to them, hey, there's a family that needs care twice a week, and they're willing to pay $23 an hour. Maybe there's a caregiver that says, oh, great, I'm going to be willing to accept that $23 an hour. Great. We match them, we help them with the interview, and then they stay on our platform to facilitate those payments. So it's no cash kind of going under the table or anything like that. And because they're on our platform, they will also then get the insurance from both sides, the family and the caregiver, if something was to happen to either one. We also have a full customer support team. So at any time there's an issue, or they need a replacement, or there needs to be more care, whatever it is, we've got somebody on the phone that can help them out. And our goal really is to kind of reduce that friction, help families out while giving them that independence that we find is the most important for families. So it's not really, going to a facility or spending an absorbent amount of money all for like 1 month or 2 months, but it's really that long-term planning on how they can sustain and stay in their homes. Because as I said, the first thing I said is, people want to remain in their home as long as possible. So a little bit about how we're a little different. In-home care is a private pay model, whether you go through us or you go through an agency. There's very few percent, there's some insurance like the VA that could cover it, but our model is completely private pay. Oops, sorry about that. Our fee is of 20%, and the caregiver never pays fees. So with most agencies, there is a large, about 50% cut that they take. We only have that 20%. With us, you get to choose your caregiver, you set your budget, you set your schedule, you set the care tasks, and obviously on the app, there is updates and real-time support. With the agency, there's no control about who you're hiring. It's a predetermined rate. There's a minimum hourly and restrictions on what you can and cannot do. And typically the support is only during business hours. Excuse me. So how we're a little different is we do have that multi-user approach. We work with what's best for the family. And we like to think that when you get a caregiver that is giving us the rates, so when we load a caregiver onto our platform, first of all, they will have to be background checked and vetted. But most importantly, they tell us how much they're expecting. Because at a care agency, when you apply for a job, they say, well, you're going to be paid $20 an hour. That's it. End of the game. There's no haggling. There's nothing. It's a set pay. But with us, we actually have a different approach where we say, okay, how much are you looking to get paid? We've got some caregivers that are saying, I've been doing this for 25 years. And typically I get paid about $35 an hour. Great. We'll match you up with a family that's willing to pay that. And maybe that wants somebody that has a lot more experience. There's other caregivers that are like, this is my first job ever. I'm okay with $18 an hour, and I'm really good at companionship. I've done this with my grandparents. And then we might set them up with a family that just needs a little bit of care and is looking for companionship, but has a lower price point. So that is kind of it in terms of what we do. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I talked a lot today. But yeah, that's basically what home care is. Those are your different options. I hope I introduced a new kind of concept to you, which is Herewith. But happy to answer any additional questions, whether that's on home care specifically or on Herewith about our platform and how we do things.
So, Bev, if we're interested in signing onto your platform, can you show us how to do that?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Let me bring it up right now. Give me 1 second. So Let me take this off 1 second. All right. I'm going to share my screen. Okay, so you'll notice that you would just go to herewith.com and it asks you right away, what are you looking for? Are you looking for a caregiver? Are you looking for a job? Again, I don't know, all I see is a bunch of names in front of me, so I don't know how old you guys are, what you're, in here for. Maybe you're here just to know a little bit more about the industry and the jobs that are available, or you're looking for care for yourself or a loved one. So as soon as you land on our page, we kind of ask you, what do you need? Do you need a caregiver or do you need a job? One thing to point out is you can call our number at any time. That's one thing I like to promote is maybe you're not sure what you need. Just call us and we'll walk you through it. Whether that's looking for a job or looking for care, we'll walk you through it if you don't want to do the online method. If you do want to do an online method, you can just say, hey, let's start my caregiver search. And I believe I'm already signed in, but it'll ask you to sign in otherwise. And it's not. I don't know if it's my screen share, but it is going to not work right now. I think it's because of my Zoom. So 1 second. I stop this. Let's see if I can do it without it. Of course, I'm not able to share it right now. Well, let me show you anyway. What you're going to do is you're going to hit start my caregiver search and it's going to show up. I'm going to show it on my phone. So hopefully you can see it on my phone. So give me 1 second. There it is. And that's not going to happen for me either, of course. Can you see that? Nope. Not going to work. Okay, I can't show my phone either. Well, I'm going to say is you can get on our website, hit caregiver search, and you put in your zip code and you put in anything else that you would like us to know, and you look for caregivers right away within your area, and you're able to search based on the price range. So you can say, $25, $35, whatever it may be. So I cannot show it to you on Zoom. I apologize. And I can't show my phone because Zoom is blocking it. So, but happy to, what I can do is I can actually put my phone number right in here. So if anybody would have questions after this, I can put my phone number in directly. So if you would like to contact me directly and I can walk you through it, happy to do so, or you can reach out to our customer success team and they can walk you through it and answer your questions about finding a caregiver as well. You can also find us on the App Store or the Google Play Store directly and start your caregiver search right away.
Great. Thank you so much. This has been so informative.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Any other questions? No? All right, Jen, you're very welcome. And let me just put my email in there too, if that helps anybody. You can go ahead and email me as well, and I'd be happy to answer any.
Great. Thank you,
All right.
Bevy.
Thank you so much.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.